And if I've done this right, then on the phone with me right now should be Amy Edmonds of Wyoming Liberty Group. Are you out there?
I am, Glenn.
And she is, and she's calling from another state that's, Amy, we're having a nice day here, and you missed it.
I'm sorry to miss it.
Yeah, well, and by the time you get back here, it won't be nice anymore. Just so you know, on occasion, when Wyoming has a nice day, and you had to be somewhere else. So you're in Kansas?
I'm in Kansas.
Okay,
yeah.
So you can go ahead and use that joke when you get back. I'm not in Kansas anymore.
Okay.
We'll just toss that out there. So,
I've never heard it before.
Yeah, Amy Edmonds is with Wyoming Liberty Group, and we're here today to talk about education, among other things, in the state of Wyoming and around the country.
Yeah, I thought maybe a recap of what did and didn't get done in the budget session.
Okay, now, this will be a talk about a lot more than just the Common Core issue, though, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
There was quite a few different education issues that were addressed or were not addressed in this budget session. So we can start off with the Common Core. Sadly, nothing was done. We saw a couple of bills brought forward. Neither actually succeeded. House Bill 97, brought by Representative Tom Reeder, got the furthest. It died on committee of the whole list that Friday when a whole bunch of other bills all were massacred at the same time for lack of time. So
and there's the main thing, so people understand, not necessarily whether the legislators thought it was a good bill or a bad bill. It's just that we have these short sessions. You got to get it in just the right amount of time, and if it dies, it may be resurrected again next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I know that we will see another bill coming forward. What that will look like, we'll have to wait and see. But yes, parents are still deeply concerned about the Common Core. Other states, as we know, are trying very hard to sort of unravel themselves from it. It's not as easy as you think.
Mm-hmm.
So states like Indiana, that are quite a few years ahead of us, they sort of had a major breakthrough yesterday. They passed a bill somewhat similar to House Bill 97, and House Bill 97 did get criticism from some folks saying, you're just addressing the standards process. You need to just say no to the Common Core. But Indiana, like Wyoming, said, listen, we have to give some alternative set of standards or some alternative process. We can't, our old standards have been so maligned by some. So what happened yesterday was Indiana's Governor Pence actually reached out to Dr. Sandusky, who is a well-known critic of the Common Core and an expert from the state of Massachusetts who worked together to write some spectacular standards for the state of Massachusetts before they were bought off by the federal government, race to the top monies. So he reached out to her and asked her to come to Indiana and to sort of start working on creating better standards. What Indiana tried to do once they passed their bill was to just re-anoint the Common Core in a different form. And parents have stayed vigilant in that state. They've showed up. They've followed the process. They've, let their legislators know. And just to give people hope, it works, and it is working now in Indiana. The governor and some legislators have finally given up.
Okay, now something I doubt they've given up for now. They will be back.
Retreated, yeah.
But and let's be careful about this too, because there are states that have tried just changing the name of Common Core, hoping that will fool people.
Right, exactly. There's no, the bottom line is there's no quick fix, and it is amazing, I think, to a lot of people how quickly states like Wyoming got into it and how unbelievably difficult it is being to get out of them. So we didn't get all the wins on the Common Core this budget session, but that topic will be back.
Okay, talking with Amy Edmonds from Wyoming Liberty Group. Let me hit one more thing on Common Core in the state of Wyoming. So does this mean that for the state of Wyoming for the coming year, the rest of this year, that they just continue to implement it? Has anything been slowed down or changed at all?
Well, I think the one good piece of news is that the Common Core is a whole system. So it's not just, these standards don't just stand alone despite what some people want us all to believe. On the other back end of the Common Core is testing. And Wyoming is a member of the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, one of two federally funded testing consortiums. The legislature chose this session not to really move forward. So while the Wyoming Department of Education under Director Rich Crandall is sending Wyoming Department of Education folks all over the country to get training on Smarter Balanced, and they seem very gung-ho that Wyoming it's going to be inevitable that Wyoming is going to use this test. That does not seem to be the case with the legislature. They chose not to move forward. They basically were on hold again, which will help districts not to have to fully implement, because it's the testing and tying teachers' scores to that testing that's really going to, and has in other states, seen total implementation.
Okay, and let's step over now, because it's on the same topic, same idea. So there's been a problem with data mining. Well, a problem as we see it with data mining for your kids. Where are we with that in our state?
The legislature chose to move forward. There was an amendment on the House side to try to strip out the $5 million funding to stop moving forward with the state longitudinal data system. That amendment, brought by Representative Hans Hunt, was defeated. So the legislature has chosen to move forward with continuing to build this massive data boondoggle. Leviathan, I believe, is Maureen Bitter likes to call it. Yeah. So we have not, and the legislature really did not address putting any kind of barriers for parents to make them feel like they're at least getting some protection. So, for instance, Representative Lynn Hutchings brought a bill simply requiring parental consent before data could be released. That bill failed. An amendment was put on another bill to try to just require them to look at the idea of parental consent, and the Senate stripped that off as well.
Okay. Well, and by the way, you keep using the phrase "moving forward," which has always been a pet peeve of mine, because I keep saying, just because someone said moving forward doesn't necessarily mean a good thing. You could move forward to a really bad place. So as they move forward with all of this, it looks to me like they're moving forward to a really bad place. How much is this going to cost the state to move forward with this Leviathan?
Well, just like the implementation of the Common Core, we don't know.
Okay.
No one is putting this down on paper. There's $5 more million, so we're at about $8 to $9 million thus far that the state is spending. And quite frankly, Glenn, we don't know. They're not doing cost analysis on all these wonderful big ideas like Common Core and data mining. So it's going to be a lot. And if we just look at lessons learned from other states and what a massive sinkhole of money these have been, and an utter failure, it's going to be a lot. But right now, the state's about $8 million in, and they're just beginning.
How do they, and I thought this was part of a rule, maybe I'm wrong here, how do they continue on with a program like this without any kind of information about how much it's going to cost, without any kind of cost analysis? I mean, aren't they supposed to have a budget for it or some parameters to work within?
Well, yes, they should, absolutely. What they're doing is piecemealing it along. So a little here, a little there. It started in 2012 with a footnote on the budget bill. Then this was also this was actually not a footnote. It was just rolled into a regular budget under the Department of Enterprise Technology Services. Wasn't really something that was highlighted. There was debate that I listened to on the House side, and I have to tell you, Glenn, the debate was dismal. There wasn't a lot of discussion about the security issues, safety issues. It was just a lot of rhetoric about, data is not a four-letter word, we have to have data, data is not a bad thing, as though those of us who are concerned are saying data is a bad thing. That's not what we're saying. We understand. I mean, data is collected every day. It's data that happens in the classroom. We've all taken quizzes, we've all taken tests, pieces of data that show our progress as students. We understand that, but those things can stay in the classroom, in the building, and in the district.
So you're talking more about what happens with the data afterwards. Who's in control of it?
Exactly. Where is it going? And then, more than simply test scores, but other data that's going to be collected that goes higher and higher. So no one is saying data is a bad thing. Teachers have been collecting data since the first pen and paper were handed. What we're saying is this goes above and beyond what is needed at the local districts to grow kids and to help them to achieve. This is data the federal government is requiring, for instance, making sure that we're compliant, that minority and at-risk students are being taught by highly qualified teachers. So we collect data on all those different various aspects. A lot of this has to do with the federal government, and parents want to know that their children's information is protected.
Well, and one more thing on the money with all of this. Any of this money being spent on this data Leviathan, any of it coming from the federal government, or is it all Wyoming money?
all Wyoming money. Wyoming attempted to apply for, so one of the carrots that the Obama administration has presented to states under the data portion of what they were requiring was a data grant. We applied, we did not get it, just like Race to the Top. So we've agreed lock, stock, and barrel to all this nonsense, and then the federal government said, no, we're not going to give you any money.
All right. Well, that seems like a nice big fat mess to me. All right. Well, I mean, it really does. I mean, it looks to me like, first off, and correct me if I'm wrong here. We don't know how much we're going to spend on it. We don't know exactly what we're supposed to be collecting yet. I mean, all of it. Is that right? We don't really even know how much or what we're supposed to be collecting yet?
Correct. Okay. We have some ideas. The Wyoming Department of Education puts out a list of all the different data points that they're collecting currently.
Right.
But there's a lot more that's being bantered about both by the federal administration, and so it's going to be more than what we're being told.
And then who has control of that afterwards? Okay. Again, this is why I just say, okay, that looks like a whole big mess to me. I'm talking with Amy Edmonds of Wyoming Liberty Group, and we're talking mainly right now about after the legislative session, what is the deal with Wyoming schools? Okay, we're now down past Common Core and collecting the data. What about, I don't want to throw you a curveball here, but in general, just testing in the state of Wyoming, that has been an issue since I've lived in Wyoming. Getting proper testing to find out where kids are at in Wyoming. Anything decided there this session?
Well, as I said, the legislature really didn't move forward, thankfully, on Smarter Balance. What is very interesting, however, Glenn, is that the Wyoming Department of Education, because the governor continues to keep us in Smarter Balance, the Smarter Balance Consortium, we are a governing state, one of 20 governing states in one of the two federally funded consortia that we are in. Because the governors continue to keep us in there, we are actually going to be involved in field testing this Smarter Balance test this spring. As a matter of fact, it may be going on right now. I know Campbell County this week, next week, and I think the final week in March are administering pause tests all over your district. Your superintendent there in Campbell County has graciously volunteered your county and your kids in your county to field test this Smarter Balance test. Now, keep in mind, Wyoming's not moving forward thus far with being part of administering this Smarter Balance test as removing the pause and doing this. Your parents will not get these test scores. This is testing somebody else's product.
Right.
And Wyoming kids are being volunteered to do that, and it's going to be happening.
Let's explain that real quick for those people, because I know you and I completely understand what that means, but for someone who doesn't understand, what do you mean by testing somebody else's products?
The Smarter Balance is a test that's being created by a very large federally funded consortium of states. So Wyoming is part of a consortium that has states like California, Michigan, I mean big states that educate millions of students. Because Governor Meade continues to keep us in this consortium, when you're in, they basically ask you, will you field test this test? So the test is not live yet. This is like, I guess if you're a computer person, this is a beta version. They want to get it out and test it all over the country in the states that are part of this consortium. Another consortium called PARC is doing the same thing. They also have created a test, very similar, and they're out testing. So Wyoming has so graciously agreed to volunteer our students to test this test.
Do the parents have any say in
yes,
whether
they absolutely.
They do. Okay.
They absolutely can opt out, and so I would encourage any parents that are listening right now to, if you want to, you can opt your child out of this.
Okay. Well, at least there's some good news in all that you've given us so far.
Yeah, okay. So that's good news. And I actually know a couple of districts, Glenn, who have, because they have heard from parents about this, and because they found out, the district has found out it was sort of sold to districts as a very short test. You know, the Smarter Balance is going to be cheaper and not as long, 45 minutes. Well, it's actually 8 hours in total in 45-minute chunks. So it's going to eat up eight more hours when you think of all the hours right now that your district's doing in this kind of pause test. So some districts have actually withdrawn their support, said, no, we said we'd do it and we're not going to. So parents, pick up the phone, call your district, opt your kids out, tell your neighbors, let them know.
Back on the air we go, and my guest calling all the way in from parts, well, I was about to say unknown, but known. She's calling in from Kansas. And what is the weather like out there right now, Amy?
Well, I hate to tell you, but it's almost 70 degrees and sunny.
Oh, okay. I say we got up to 57. Now, here's the deal. When I'm standing outside in 27 degrees and 70 in a short sleeve shirt, then it's been a cold winter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, all right. So Amy Edmonds is with Wyoming Liberty Group. We're talking, we got about 6 minutes left here, Amy, talking about the legislative session and what they've decided with Wyoming schools. Anything else we're missing here before I go and ask more questions that I got?
There's a couple little pieces. So
Okay.
one thing that did get accomplished, an amendment to the budget bill, and that was to stop the adoption by the State Board of Education of the next generation science standards.
Hmm.
So those standards were stopped. The State Board does not have the authority now to go forward and adopt those. They were on the verge, if you remember last November, up in Lander, a whole bunch of parents showed up. They sort of put the brakes on that and have been kind of limping along. Well, now they're not going to be able to. This does not mean that the state won't move forward with looking at other science standards. It simply means that they can't adopt these standards, which you know are highly controversial. They're being litigated here in the state of Kansas. There are lots and lots of issues with them, so the state really just needs to take a look at some much better standards. And these standards were graded by the Fordham Institute at a C. I mean, they're not fabulous standards, so hopefully Wyoming's Department of Education will take a look at some much better standards.
Well, now, for those people, you're into this every day. This is what you do for a living. For the average parent out there, when they hear about these standards, or first off, how do they hear about the standards? Then where do they go look them up and read about them in a way that they can actually understand? Is there some place that you can go?
You know, there's a lot of different groups out there. You, of course, can go into the Wyoming Department of Education website where you can click on and read the standards. They're long and extensive, but you're going to start noticing right away when you get into just the kindergarten standards, some of the issues, as we talked about, teaching of global warming, man-made global warming, man's as a fact, as a non-arguable fact.
Right.
So they certainly can do that. You know, you can just go online. There's all kinds of resources. Wyoming Citizens Opposing Common Core, Truth in American Education, the Cato Institute, of course, wyliberty.org, wylibertyineducation.org. There are opportunities to go out there and research, Google it, you know, put in a next generation science standards that you can see, because there's a lot of discussion nationwide. 20-some states were involved in creating these standards. Surprisingly, only 10 of them have adopted them, which I think speaks to the problems when you've got that many states that were involved, and the ones who were involved didn't even then adopt them. So there are real issues with these standards. They were sort of the second generation of the Common Core in a sense. They're not related specifically to the Common Core, but they came on the heels of them. And thankfully, states are turning away. So that was one good piece of, I think, a victory for parents, and one they're very happy about. And then the last thing was accountability. You know, accountability has been a huge topic in Wyoming. And when they talk about accountability, they're talking about government-created accountability, top-down accountability. There were several accountability bills that simply didn't get advanced, very interestingly so. I don't have the answers as to why. I just know that they were on the list and then didn't move forward.
Okay.
So the Select Accountability Committee will continue to do its work because it got more money in the budget bill, but nothing was really done this session.
Oh, okay. I'm talking with Amy Edmonds from Wyoming Liberty Group about education in the state of Wyoming. I got to ask you, because I'm thoroughly confused, and I would bet you are too. Okay, so we still have, I don't understand how, a director of education and a superintendent, and the storming of the castle to take back our office didn't work. Why did they reconfirm this guy? I don't understand after the court decision.
Glenn, I don't either.
Yeah, okay.
To be honest with you, I don't know if they thought it was a courtesy to the governor because he was the governor's appointee. That still seems really silly. Why extend a courtesy when the Supreme Court has been very clear about this? I don't know.
Okay.
Makes no sense.
You see, because to me it leaves a lot of confusion about who's actually in charge of our schools right now, who's the decision maker, and when it comes to this next election as voters, what are we supposed to do?
Well, I mean, what I can tell you very clearly right now in practical terms, Director Richard Crandall is in charge. I mean, when it comes to decisions that are being made day to day, he is still there and he is still making decisions. Of course, he is an appointee of the governor, so you can call and talk to the governor. But despite the Supreme Court decision, they continue their legal wranglings, and the superintendent is not allowed back in.
Okay. Well, and we saw that on Monday that she's not allowed back in. But okay, because again, we're going to have an election this year. And we're going to have to pick the superintendent. And again, we don't know what we're picking at this point. So, okay. State is in a state of confusion.
It is. I mean, I don't know why. I think the Supreme Court was fairly clear, but
Yeah.
we are still in a state of confusion. I believe the superintendent has gotten a date in front of the district judge, so hopefully
Right.
they can get that, worked out
Yeah.
and get her back in the
Hopefully
office.
soon.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, Amy. Thanks for coming on the program. And when do you get back into the state?
Next week.
Next week. Okay, that's when the blizzard will hit.
Right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Glenn. I appreciate it.
All right, bye.